Welcome to another session of Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo. Welcome everyone, one and all. And so I'm reading this one article here. It's published at AmericaFirstReports.com, and it's written by Brandon Smith. And the headline reads, "Is a future war between the U.S. and Europe unavoidable?" It's a provocative article, and the author may be making he is making a lot of good points. The problem, there's something that I talk about often, the law of unintended consequences. And whenever somebody makes a big change to something, more often than not, there is a tentacle of whatever it is that they're changing that is then going to be affected, and it's something they don't take into account, and it creates ongoing problems. And now, whether or not we fight Europe at some point in time, I don't think I'm going to live to see that, but perhaps somebody in the future will, because we just do not know what the future holds. We may have an idea in some ways, but in so many other ways we don't have it. And so in the article, what he talks about, what's important, I think, is the influx of immigrants that Europe is, I'm going to say, suffering through right now. The leaders are ecstatic, but keep in mind, these leaders are lining their pockets, ruling against the will of the people. And it's the people that you have to worry about, because people have a breaking point. And leaders can push only so far. And when they hit the breaking point, then it creates a lot of problems. And we're starting to see that happening now in areas in Europe. Certainly, there are areas of the UK where they're starting to have protests against the influx of Muslim immigrants and the crimes that these people are committing, against the regular, normal, UK-born, UK-bred citizens. And this is similar, we're not exempt from this. This is very similar to what's been happening in Minnesota. You have a certain group, the Somalis, and they don't want to anger the Somalis because they're relying on the Somali voting bloc to keep the liberal loons in power, and so that they can keep lining their pockets. But at some point in time, people have a breaking point. And we don't have it so bad here in America as they do in Europe. In Europe right now, I think they push the people too far, too fast, and you're going to see more and more and more and more problems that are generated because of this. I mean, the most recent election in the UK, which was primarily local elections, but Labour, the Labour Party in the UK, which is the equivalent to our Democratic Party, has what they've done to that country in such a fairly short period of time is unbelievable. And the people now realize after the fact that they've made a mistake. But they have a prime minister in there, half of his cabinet is resigned. This guy is involved in one debacle after another, yet he just flatly refuses to leave. As somebody pointed out, he's not ruling anymore. He's merely occupying an office. Now, how much truth there is to that, I don't necessarily know. But what I do know is you can only push people so far. And then when you push people so far, then they lash out. And that's certainly where Europe is at. And, you got some countries in Europe, I think Hungary and Poland are probably two examples, They're not falling for this nonsense and open up their borders and just letting whoever the heck wants to come in there come in. And look, there is, I'm going to call it the hidden problem. The problem that doesn't get talked about as much as it needs to be talked about. But, you know, China for years had their one-child policy in effect. And, of course, a married couple having one child is not enough to sustain the current population. It's going to cause a decrease in the population. And all of a sudden, one day, China woke up and said, hey, wait a minute. We got all of these aging people, and we don't have enough young people to care for them. Now, they haven't figured out how they're going to work through that yet, but this is a problem that most Western countries are experiencing because their birth rates are below the rate necessary to sustain their populations, which makes them, their populations, unless it gets modified by immigrants, as it's declining. And in some of these places, it is said that one of the reasons that they're allowing this is because they have to augment their workforce. The birth rate has been so low in some of these European countries. And so, yeah, I guess you can argue, hey, this was partially their fault. But they just don't like the way it's happening. You know, perhaps if there were immigrants coming from a country that shares their culture and everything, perhaps then they wouldn't object as much. But these Muslims are coming in, and they expect these places, for instance, they were talking about in London passing some Sharia law to include requiring women to wear burqas. And I keep thinking to myself, what does Queen Camilla have to say about this? What does the Princess of Wales have to say about this? And I'm sure that they have no intentions of wearing a burqa, but it may be forced upon them. Because at some point, these governments are going to lose control. You know, they thought that they had a solution that's going to keep them in power. And I believe that their actions are only going to result in them being booted from power. And, you know, the great fear is like you see in areas of Minnesota and in some areas of Texas, which really has me flabbergasted. I can't explain that. But nonetheless, you have these areas, these Muslim enclaves, and they're looking to expand, and they're looking to force their ideology on all of us. And I know they talk about radical Muslims and non-radical Muslims, but the reality is the Torah is the Torah. And the Torah says, you know, yeah, you can lie to your enemy as long as you're furthering the goal. And the goal is to convert the infidel. And if you can't convert them, then you're supposed to kill them. And that's what the religion calls for. And that's why it just, the East and the West have not meshed together before in history at any point in time, to any great or a significant degree. And I don't think you're going to see that now. You're not seeing it now. And it's only going to continue to play out worse. But I understand that this problem of how do you sustain your workforce is, you know, one has to wonder. You know, here in America, there was a point in time, and I've tried searching this, but they haven't fed it into the AI model, so AI doesn't know. But there was a point in time during the baby boomer generation when more workers would be leaving the workforce than there were available to replace them entering the workforce. And that's where we're at now. And that's going to continue. You know, for years, I always used to consider the stock market somewhat of a Ponzi scheme. Now, if you buy the stock solely to collect the dividend and you're happy with that, then fine. But most people buy stocks not just for the dividend, and in many cases not even for the dividend, but rather for the rise in the price of the stock. But I always believed, I said, well, if the number of employees is naturally going to be decreasing, it only seemed to reason to me that you would have less workers to buy this stock at a time when you have more people retiring. And when these people are retiring, they're dipping into their 401ks and other retirement programs, which you would think would have to be selling their assets, stock and the like, in order to keep paying these retirement benefits. So all the economies in Europe and our economy, even here in America, it should be, declining right now. It should be going down because every year we have less workers entering the workforce than those leaving the workforce. So our GDP should be going down. Our workforce should be going down. But you know what? None of this is apparently happening. And I say apparently because the government figures don't necessarily show that happening right now, even though I don't believe any of these figures. And I think most people realize, the government has gotten too comfortable lying to the voters. And that's unfortunately happening with the Trump administration, just as well as many of, all of the past administrations in the last 30 years. Let's put it that way. And so, again, I don't know how this is going to play out, but the birth rate across the world, there's only a few places, Africa and South America primarily, have birth rates to sustain their populations, but not the world population. So we'll see how this plays out. I don't know, but will there be a war between the United States and Europe? I don't see it in my lifetime, but stranger things have happened. I've certainly seen a lot of things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. So one never knows. Then all we can do is keep our fingers crossed. And while we're at it, stay safe in this ever crazy world we live in. And so I wish you the best. Stay safe. I'll see you in the next time. Bye-bye.